Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on finishing up our options scene, and we added in our logic for allowing us to change the color of our menu. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. Alright, so with our core logic in place for our options scene, what we're going to do next is we're going to work on persisting our data. So currently, when we update our options in our options menu and we go close to save, what happens is we come back to our title scene. If we go back into our options menu, all of our options have reset back to their default value. And so what we're going to want to do is a first step is we're going to want to persist this to our data manager. And then that way, from our data manager class, we'll have this stored in our global state and we'll be able to use these options throughout our game. In addition to this, we'll also want to go ahead and persist this to our browser local storage. And the reason for that is when we refresh our game, all of our cache inside our data manager is actually lost. And so for us to actually persist this data between multiple sessions, we're going to need to save it somewhere. And so for this series, we'll go ahead and use our browser's local storage just for storing our data. And later on, this could easily be replaced with something like Firebase or some other storage mechanism to store this in the cloud. All right, so go ahead and get started. What we're going to go ahead and do is let's come back to our code and let's go into our data manager class. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to update our global state, go ahead and have a new property options. And this is going to be an object that'll have our various options that represent our values in our options menu. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and copy this line here for our player. And we'll go ahead and change this to options. Then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. We'll go ahead and paste that. And now we're going to go ahead and start adding our properties on our options object. So we'll go ahead and change this to options. And then we'll go ahead and have text speed. And then basically we just need to create one for each of these. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is just going to copy this. We'll go ahead and paste it a few times. And so after our text speed, we're going to have our battle scene animations. We'll have our battle style. We'll have sound, we're going to have volume, and then we're going to have our menu color. And now what we need to do is we just need to update our references to our types. And so for text speed, this is going to be our text speed menu options type. And we'll have our battle scene menu options. We'll have our battle style menu options, our sound menu options, our volume menu options, and then we need to have our menu color. And so we'll go ahead and have menu color options. So now that we've defined the structure we're going to want for our data, we need to go ahead and add that to our initial state. So if we come down to our initial state object, let's go ahead and add in our new property called options, and then we'll go ahead and make this an object, and then we'll go ahead and add in our various values. So we'll have text speed. And basically what we're going to want to do for these, we're going to go ahead and use our initial values from when we called the init method in our options scene. And so we're just going to go ahead and move our default values over to our data manager. So what I'm just going to go ahead and do, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this block of code. Let's bring it over to data manager, and we're just going to go ahead and paste it so I have it for reference. And then we'll just go ahead and copy these and update them as needed. All right, so we'll have our text speed options. And then we're going to go ahead and have our battle scene animations. And let's do our battle style, sound, volume, and then we'll have our menu color. So for menu color, it'll be 0, volume will be 4, sound, we'll go ahead and copy our value. Let's go ahead and grab our battle style. And then let's go ahead and grab our battle scene. And let's go ahead and remove this code. And then what we'll do is we just need to go ahead and add our imports. Let's go ahead and add them to our code. All right, so now that we have our initial state, next we'll need to go ahead and add these keys to our data manager store keys object. And then that way from our option scene, we can go ahead and call into our class and our store, and we can go ahead and update our values as we modify them. And so what we're going to go ahead and do, we're just going to go ahead, we'll have a prefix of options, and then we're going to go ahead and do text speed. We'll have options. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy this prefix. And so after text speed, we'll have our battle scene animations, we'll have our prefix, and then we'll have our battle style, and then we'll have our sound, followed by volume, and then finally our menu color. And then what we'll do is we just need to go ahead and add in our values. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and let's just make sure we have our strings. And then let's go ahead and update our value. So let's go ahead and copy these, and we'll place them over here. All right, then what we'll do is let's come down to our update data manager method, and we're gonna go ahead and update our store to have our initial values. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and copy this, and we're gonna have to paste it a few times. And we're gonna go ahead and change this from player directions. We'll have our options, text speed, and we'll have our options, battle scene animations, options, battle style, and then we'll have our sound volume, followed by our menu color. Now we just need to grab the right property on our data. So we're going to go ahead and have data, we'll have options, and then we'll have text speed. Let's copy options, and we'll go ahead and update that. And let's update our various values. And so we'll have menu color, we're going to have volume, sound, battle style, and then battle animations. All right, so now we updated our data manager to go ahead and support our new properties. What we should be able to do is jump over to our options scene, and we should be able to go ahead and reference our data manager to first go ahead and retrieve the values from there that we've persisted, or use our initial defaults. And then as we update our various settings and we go ahead and save, when we exit, we can go ahead and persist those. All right, and so to go ahead and do this, let's go ahead and come into our init method, and what we'll do is we're gonna go ahead and get rid of our defaults, and instead we're gonna reference our data manager. And then we'll go ahead and grab our store to grab our phaser data store, and then we're gonna use the get method to go ahead and get our default value from there. And so this will be our data manager store keys, and we'll go ahead and use our values. So we'll have our options and our text speed. And then what we can do is let's go ahead and grab this line of code, and we're just going to go ahead and update all of our various settings. So just go ahead and paste it, and then we'll go ahead and update. All right, and so for our battle scene options, we're going to go ahead and do our options, and then our battle scene, options, battle style, our sound, volume, and then our menu color. All right, and so what we should be able to do is if we go ahead and refresh our scene, we should still see our default settings are being applied to our options scene. And now to go ahead and actually update our values, what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go ahead and make a new method to go ahead and do this. So let's come down below our update method. And right below our update method, what we'll do is we're gonna make a new private method, and we're gonna call this update option data in data manager. And so inside here, we're going to want to go ahead and use that set method to store our data inside our data manager from Phaser. And so we'll do data manager, store, and we'll go ahead and do set. And then what we need to go ahead and do is instead of setting them individually, we're going to go ahead and store all of our key value pairs in one go. And so what we'll do is for our key, we're going to use our data manager store keys, and we'll do our options text speed. And then our value is going to reference our currently selected option. And so we'll have selected text speed option. And then what we'll do is let's grab this line of code, and we're going to go ahead and copy and paste it a few times. And we'll go ahead and store our various settings. So we'll have battle scene animations, battle style, sound, volume, and finally menu color. We'll get rid of the extra one. And now let's go ahead and reference our correct properties. And so we'll have selected battle scene option, selected battle style option, selected sound menu option, selected volume menu option, and then finally our selected menu color option. All right, so now that we've updated our data store, we just need to go ahead and call our new method. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come to our update method. And what we're going to do is in our to-do, we had a place for saving our data. And so we're just going to go ahead and replace that with our new method. And so what we're doing is when we select our confirm button, originally we were just fading out to our title scene, and now we'll go ahead and persist our data before we do that. All right, so with our last change, we should be able to go ahead and test our changes. So let's go ahead and come over to our game. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and change all of our settings to the right, just so it looks very different than our default settings. And let's go ahead and choose our close button. Then if we come into our options, we should see the data that we selected is now persisted, And we can see that in our options scene. And just one other quick sanity test. We're going to go ahead and go all the way to the left. We'll go ahead and do 2 for our menu color so that we're not using the default. And let's go ahead and do close to save our changes. If we go back into options, we should still see our same settings have been applied. All right, so nice. So with those changes, what we managed to do is persist our data to our data manager for our current session. And so one of the things we're going to have to address is if we refresh our browser, we'll see our settings now revert back to their default settings. And so this is fine for some games, but what we want to do here is we actually want to persist this. So then that way, once we apply our settings, when we come back to our game, as long as we don't clear our data, we should be able to pick right back up where we left off. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start laying the groundwork for saving our data to our storage layer. And so for this, we're going to go ahead and use our browser local storage. And then later on, you could switch this out with something else. So in order to start adding support for storing our data, what we need to do is let's come back to our code. And inside our data manager, what we'll want to do is we're going to want to add 2 new methods. The first one's going to be for actually saving our data. And so this method is going to be responsible for checking to see if local storage is supported. And if it is, it's going to go ahead and bundle up all of our data and store it into our browser. Then the other part of this will be our load method. And so our load data method, what this is going to do, it'll also check to see if our local storage is supported. And if it is, it's going to go ahead and make an attempt to fetch our data. And as long as we get something back, we'll go ahead and try to parse it and then go ahead and update our data manager with that data that we received. And so to go ahead and start implementing this, what we're going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and come down below our getter and let's add our 2 public methods. And so we're going to go ahead and add in load data. And then we'll go ahead and add in save data. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with our save data method. All right, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we need to make sure our browser local storage is actually available to us before we call any of our methods. And so to do that, we can use the type of method and then reference storage. And so this is going to reference the web storage API. And if this API is not available in our current browser, then this will be set to undefined. And so if it is set to undefined, then what we'll do is we're just going to log a message and we'll go ahead and return early from our code. And so what we'll do is we're going to do console, we're going to do a warning message, and we're going to go ahead and reference our data manager name. And so that way we have our class name, and then we're going to do our method. And so for our method, this will be save data. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say local storage is not supported, will not be able to save and load data. All right, so we're going to go ahead and assume our happy path. And so what we need to do is we need to grab all of our data from our Phaser Data Manager store, and then we need to go ahead and persist this to our local storage. And so one of the constraints with our local storage is it's a key value pair store, but our values can only be strings. And so an easy way to work with this is we're going to take all of our data and put it into one object and then go ahead and stringify it. And so one thing to note is we won't be doing a deep dive into the browser local storage. If you are interested in learning more, there'll be a card on your screen now with a video that kind of dives deeper into the browser local storage and how it actually works. There'll also be a link in the video description if you want to check that out. All right, so to go ahead and grab our data from our data manager, we're going to go ahead and create a new method to do this. And what it'll do is it'll grab all of our data and put it into an object. So let's make a new variable and we'll call this data to save. And we're going to do this, and we're going to call this data manager data to global state object. And then what we'll do is we're going to do our local storage, and we're going to go ahead and call set item. And then we need to go ahead and provide a key for where we want to store our data. And we're going to make a new variable, and we'll do local storage key. And then we're going to go ahead and do JSON stringify our data to save. All right, so first, let's go ahead and define our new variable. So we come up to the top of our class. We'll do const local storage key, and we're just going to do monster Tamer data. All right, and then what we need to do is we need to define our new method. So it's going to come down to the bottom of our class. We'll have our method be private, and we're just going to go ahead and return an object. And so for our new method, what we need to do is we need to grab all the values from our store, and we're going to put it on this object. And so what I'm going to do is we come up to our global state. We're going to go ahead and copy this logic here so we have a base. And we're going to go ahead and paste that inside here. And then what we'll do is just for each of our properties, we're going to go ahead and grab them from our data manager. And so we'll do this. We'll reference our phaser store, and we'll do the get method to get our value. We'll do our data manager keys, and then we'll do player position. And then this is going to return an object, and so we'll want our X value. So then we'll copy this. We'll go ahead and update our Y value. And then what we can do is we're going to copy this. Let's do our direction, and we'll get rid of our property because it's not an object. Instead, it's just going to come back as our value. And now what we can do is let's copy this, and we'll paste this for all of our options down here. All right, now we should go ahead and update our strings that we're trying to grab. And so we're going to have options. We'll have text speed, options, battle scene animations, battle style, sound, volume, and then finally our menu color. All right, so go ahead and test our changes. We actually need to call our new method. So let's jump over to our options scene. And inside our update option data and data manager method, what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and use our data manager, and we're going to call our save data method. So then what we should be able to do is let's come over to our browser. All right, so what we'll do is we'll change some of our settings. And then if we go ahead and close the save, what we should be able to do is if we go into our developer console, we should be able to do local storage, and we should be able to see our values that have been stored here. All right, we'll see on our storage, we have our object, and we see our property that we set for our key, monster tamer data, and now we see our JSON string that represents our state. So we can see that our save data is working properly. And so to round out our functionality, we just need to build out our load data method. And so inside load data, the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is check to make sure our local storage is available. And so what I'm going to do is let's just copy this if statement here. We're going to place that inside load data, and we'll go ahead and update our method name. And then for our happy path, what we'll want to do is we'll want to grab our data from our browser. And so we'll do const saved data. We're going to set that equal to local storage dot get, and we need to go ahead and use our local storage key. And what we're going to do, we'll do if save data equals null. We'll go ahead and return early. And so with your local storage, when you do your get item, if that key that you provide is not defined, so if I just do like 2, it's going to go ahead and return null back to us. All right, so we're going to assume that we have our data. So then if we do have our data, what we'll do is we're going to wrap this in a try catch statement. And we'll do our error, and then we'll go ahead and handle our error. And so for our error, what we'll do is we're just going to console log another warning message, and we'll change our method name. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to change our message. So we'll say encountered an error while attempting to load and parse save data. All right, so what we're doing here is for our save data, we know it's a JSON string. And so we need to go ahead and parse that back into an object so that way we can work with it. And so when we call the JSON parse method, this will go ahead and throw an error if there's something wrong with the data when it tries to convert it into our object. And so as an example, if I just do json.parse, and if I just provide an invalid object, something like this, what should happen is this is going to throw an error. And so for our code, we're going to go ahead and catch this and just handle it by logging a message. All right, so then what we'll do is let's go ahead and try parsing our data. So we'll do const, and we'll do parsed data is going to be equal to json.parse, and we'll do our save data. And then what we need to do is we actually need to update our data inside our phaser data store. And so what we'll do is we're going to call our update data manager method. So we'll do this, update data manager, and we'll go ahead and pass in our parse data. And so what we're doing here is when our game refreshes, we need to go ahead and repopulate our data inside our phaser data store. All right, so now to go ahead and actually test our functionality, let's jump over to our preload scene. And in our preload scene, what we'll do is we're going to come down to our create method. And so what we're going to do is right before we transition to our next scene, we're going to go ahead and attempt to load our data. And so we're going to go ahead and reference our data manager, and we're going to call our load data method. All right, so now that we update our preload scene, we should be able to test our full code. And so if we jump over to our game, what we'll do is let's go ahead and I'm going to set all my settings to the left again. We'll change that to 2. I'm going to go ahead and save my data. If we come back into our options menu, we should see our data still persisted because it's in our global state. All right, if we go ahead and refresh our browser, we should see that our data is now persisted. And so by calling that load data method from our preload scene, we're making sure all of our data is available before we actually start one of our other scenes, like our option scene or our title scene. All right, and with that actually brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to take all of the logic we've been building in our option scene, and now we're going to tie it to our battle scene. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take our text speed option and our battle scene animation options, and we're going to use that to configure our battle scene. And so what we'll do is we'll have our text speed update depending on the value that's set here, and we can skip animations depending on what's set here. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of this video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.